All right, you're good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting of the City Council, URA, and Housing Authority Boards and Commission Appointments Committee to order for March 16th. Present are Bennett.
Boy.
Nordyke.
Okay, very good. And Linda, where would you like us to start?
Well, I think your starting point is going to be reviewing the Ward 8 applications and making some determinations about advancing a certain number to be interviewed at next Monday's special council meeting.
So have you guys had a chance to take a quick look at these? Do you?
Yes.
Does anyone have any recommendations on how you'd like to go ahead with this?
Well, in looking at them, it seemed like there were sort of two groups that I sort of put them into, and most of these folks I don't know, so I'm basing it strictly on what's in our material.
Yeah.
And it seemed like I found 4 applicants who I thought had really considered and given thorough answers on their application, and the other 3 that I felt like just didn't. And then I understand we have 1 who withdrew. So I had 4 names that I would be comfortable with forwarding, but I don't know how many this group wanted to forward.
I'm fine with 4, but what do you think, Vanessa?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a shame our colleagues aren't here for this meeting. This is certainly the most important.
No, they don't get to come to this meeting.
No, I mean, Stephen Gonzalez is who I mean.
Oh,
yeah.
I know. I'm sorry they are too.
Yeah. But, I remember when it came down to, I was in this rather unusual position.
Yeah, you've done this. That's right.
Yeah. I think we interviewed 2 that year, but just because that's the way we did things before doesn't necessarily mean we should do things this year. Sometimes you're going to get a better applicant pool than others. And I like the concept of, who's investing the time in filling out the application, who's bringing a breadth of experience. I'd like to know who the 4 are in mind. I would say interviewing more than 4 might be a bit much. But I'm generally on board with the concept of interviewing anywhere between 2 and 4 seems like a fair starting point to me.
Why don't you go ahead, Chris? And we're probably all looking at the same 4. I would just guess.
Yeah, and just for a little bit of historical, thank you for reminding us, Vanessa, you went through this. As I recall, we didn't have nearly this large of applicant pool when we considered you. I think it was much smaller, so it was a little bit different. Yeah. So, in my mind, so that when I looked at these, I definitely wouldn't want to send more than 4 names to the full council. I think that's the maximum we would want to do. But I looked at, and I'll just in no particular order, Martin Hepp, Mickey Varney, Chris Cummings, and Jess Barton were the 4 who I felt like I had sufficient information on their application to get a sense of them, to get a sense of what they were going to bring to this position. So those and the others I felt were significantly less than that. So those are the names I saw.
That sounds, that's really similar to what I saw as well. I like that we've got a couple that aren't running for office. I think we ought to take a close look. That would probably be the only other consideration. Should we be, and that'll be for the full council, but should we be picking someone who's a candidate? That's sort of like, does the council want to endorse a candidate?
Right.
Between Cummings and Mickey, or but is one of the other 2 a reasonable fill-in? I like what you're doing here. I think that works.
So Chris, you said Cummings, Varney, Barton, and the 4th person?
Hepp.
Hepp, okay.
Hepp, H-E-P-P, Martin Hepp.
Okay, let me just, I know we received supplemental information. By the way, just in the interest of transparency, I had asked the staff, can we please find out what the employment background and education is for these individuals and other kind of basic demographics. The reason being is that I find it helpful to know where you work, if you work, what your educational background is. So I was kind of surprised to see that those aren't standard questions that are already a part of these applications. So
Yeah, they're not, you're right.
yeah, and I encouraged our city manager. I sent Kristen Rutherford an email just saying, for future reference, I know this doesn't come up all that often, but I would like to see employment and education just added
On
to
all applicants, Vanessa, or what?
yeah, on all applicants. I think, I'd like to know, who, yeah, I would just like to know if you're.
But we don't need to talk to the city manager. Do you guys want to have that? We'll put it on.
That sounds good to me.
It's fine with me.
I don't have a preference. I think it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, we'll put it on.
All right, that sounds good.
It's way easier than going to the city manager.
All right, thank you. So when I look at Mr. Hepp, and I'm just playing catch up, I know he just got his information into us. For his educational background, he's currently employed at Oregon Employment Department. Let's see, he has a background in arbitration, conflict management. That seems applicable, and all kinds of things. So I like that list of 4. I think all 4 candidates come from a variety of backgrounds, and they all seem qualified. So I would be fine with forwarding those 4.
You want to make a motion then, Chris?
I move we forward Jess Barton, Mickey Barney, Chris Cummings, and Martin Hepp to the full council for considerations for the Ward 8 City Council appointment.
Okay, without objection, we'll go ahead. Okay. That will be the slate we'll present. And you want to call these guys now?
We got the information in a supplemental email.
They submitted it.
Okay.
It's all been
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's all there.
So we've got it. Okay, so we have current employer.
Yep.
Other
got all that.
employment in the last 5 years, professional collegiate. So we're pretty good for these. Okay.
Yeah.
And we can just make it a standard practice from here on out.
We'll add it on to the application. Okay, great. Okay.
Now we're on to Community Police Review Board.
Okay, we've got 2 reappointments, so I would just suggest we clear the decks on those 2 if there's no objection. Lori Lassen and Carlos Flores would be reappointments. They've been serving, they show up once a year or whatever it is this group meets. So I would just move that we reappoint those 2.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Any objection? Okay.
Nope.
Okay. I've got 3 recommendations for regular members. Do you want me to run those out? You guys take a look at them, see what you think. Okay. Oni Marchbanks, go to a full term. Mel Gregg and Elizabeth Infante would become regular members.
I wholeheartedly agree with Oni Marchbanks. I know of Miss Marchbanks. We've met a couple times.
Yeah.
Really dedicated, very invested in a lot of different community groups. I think she'd be excellent. And she also knows the nature of the work. So obviously she knows what she's getting herself into and has shown a passion for it. So I agree with that.
Okay.
The other 2 candidates I was interested in were Leah Brooks. However, it looks like, was she just appointed to HRC December?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so probably don't appoint her just because she's already been appointed elsewhere.
Yeah.
I also was interested in Miss Colson, Shala Colson. Let me take a look at her application. Let's see. So Miss Colson has worked in, she's been a volunteer for several years in our school district, a volunteer at Corbin University. She's worked with a lot of youth in the area, which I find is helpful. She has a great deal of lived experience in working with diverse communities, which I think is important for the Community Police Review Board. And she also comes from, which,
Not
hold on,
here in town.
here.
Does she not live here in town?
Yeah, that was my only concern with her, is that we have actual residents who are interested and she doesn't actually live in the
Yeah,
city.
she really isn't a resident. I'd rather not have our police subjected to folks who don't live here.
Well, but it says there's no requirement.
I know, but we've got plenty of actual community people. I've tended to, just personally, I avoid people who don't live here unless it specifies take somebody from out of town.
All right, well, failing that, there was one other person who has actually served on the PSRB who I thought would bring a really fascinating skill set. I'm trying to find that person in my materials.
If it assists, that might be Tracy Powell.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gretchen. Yes, so Tracy Powell, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the PSRB, the Psychiatric Security Review Board, they work with a lot of individuals who have severe mental illness. And Miss or Mr. Powell, I don't see the pronouns identified. Tracy Powell's background in forensic psychology, I think, would be very useful. She's also served as a student conduct committee chair in matters relating to sexual assault allegations. And just has, I would say, a very impressive background. And she's worked on a citizen review board before. And she lives in Ward 8, he or she, I honestly can't tell. But anyway, I thought that would be a strong candidate.
Female.
Oh, served as a victims advocate in Marion County DA's office.
So we also have an alternate position available. So we have 3 full-term and an alternate. And if we move Oni into one of the full, that leaves us with 2 and an alternate.
I had
Mary,
Tracy Powell for alternate as one of the alternates, but I can hear the interest there.
I'm good with the 3 people that we're talking about in whichever slots that we put them in terms of Tracy Powell, Mel, Greg, and Elizabeth Infante. And I'm
And
good
Grant
with
Yoder was the other name I had for an alternate member.
I can offer Elizabeth provides some experience having been a person, she's Latina or Hispanic, and that's a community perspective or identity that we don't currently have represented, which might bode for the regular versus the alternate, with Tracy an alternate, and then Grant is male, and we're very low on males. And so from a diversity standpoint, just offering those tips in case those are helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let me try this and then we can see if you want to substitute names. I'm going to move that we appoint Oni Marchbanks, Mel Gregg, and Elizabeth Infante as regular members, and Tracy Powell and Grant Yoder as alternate members.
that works for me.
Does that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll second that motion. And, as I revisit materials of Miss Infante, she looks very well qualified too. I like that she's
Yes.
worked with at-risk youth,
Yeah, we're-
worked with individuals struggling with addiction and homelessness, her work with the Marion County Circuit Court, et cetera. So no, that's a fine choice.
We were really blessed with a good group this time. That
Yes, we
doesn't
were.
always happen that you get very many. So great. Okay, well, we will recommend those. We'll recommend Lori Lassen and Carlos Flores for reappointment. Oni Marchbanks, Mel Gregg, and Elizabeth Infante as regular members, and Tracy Powell and Grant Yoder as alternate members, and we'll advance that to the council.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now where are we?
We are at Downtown Advisory Board. 1 application, 1 vacancy. And this person, you have reviewed her application before, Councilor Hoy, you probably remember.
Yes.
And while she's not a resident, she works at a downtown business, and the liaison to this group is interested in having her be a part of this board. And that's, again, like Gretchen said, that's food for thought for you, but nothing more.
And it meets one of the requirements of the stated requirements for this board. So I think I have no problem with Jessica Miller being appointed at all. I think she'd be great.
She's our only applicant.
Yep, that's why I think she'd be great.
That makes her even better.
No, I do think that she brings a good perspective, which is a person who works downtown, an employee perspective. I think it'll be great.
That works for me.
Okay, then without objection, we'll advance Jesse Miller for the Downtown Advisory Board slot. North Gateway. Is that what's next?
Yes. They have a number of vacancies, as you can see, and I hope that I made clear what the liaison and I worked on in terms of eligibility and, wanting to help you understand what could be done.
So why don't you tell us who you guys are recommending?
Okay, well, there were 2 recent applicants, and Mr. Lucas, the first one, he qualifies for an at-large position, but he's got a business that's coming up to be opened, I guess, in the North Gateway area. And then Scott Cantawine, he qualifies for a partial term position representing interests of small and large businesses. He's a non-resident, but he has an existing business there in that North Gateway area. It's a little, different, but it works. And I know that the staff liaison is eager to, add some more knowledge and quite frankly, bodies to her board.
So Mr. Lucas, you mentioned that he has a business that's about to open or going to open. Where is that in the process? Because he lives in West Lynn. He doesn't actually have a business here yet. I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Yeah, Pro Bags Plus. Apparently.
Like, is it imminent?
What?
Like,
Yeah,
have we
what's
been working
that?
with the person to
Let's
open the
see.
business, or where is that?
Yeah, it doesn't say. He's on the advisory committee at CTAC, and it doesn't give a specific date. I could try to find out from the liaison.
Well, if the liaison is recommending this person, I don't have any reason not to. I'm just concerned that has he been there to North Gateway? I mean, he lives in West Lynn. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can find out and get back to you on that to confirm between now and the March 28th meeting, when I would be preparing the report and bringing these forward. It would also help with the overall diversity of the board. So I'll find out if you want to go ahead and say, okay, but I can confirm, however you want to do it.
I like your proposal. We want to make sure this person meets some pretty basic requirements. I think that's not too much to ask.
We have the same.
We'll do a tentative, we'll approve it, and then we can always vote no if new information comes up.
Well, that's a really good point. Just send it back. Yeah, on the 20th.
Yeah, we can always send it back.
Yeah, okay. And
That'll be fine.
Scott Candawine, same thing. What's the story?
He has an existing business there. It's just and that is the address on his application. But the liaison has had a subsequent conversation with him, and she learned that he doesn't actually live in the North Gateway area, but that's where his business is.
That's fine. That meets the membership criteria for that board. I have no problem with that one.
Okay, well then I would we move these 2 forward. And then I think as we understand, we may discover we want to send them back. We've always got that option, so.
Yep, that works for me.
Okay, Vanessa?
Yes, I'm on board.
Okay. What's next?
I'm writing my notes here. Next is we can look at the Salem Cultural and Tourism Promotion Advisory Board. I didn't split them out between URA and council this time because it seemed to be confusing for people. But I can, so you can let me know
Fine.
your preference.
We're fine.
Okay. If you're fine, then Salem Culture on Tourism Promotion Advisory Board, one application. This is for a very, very partial term that ends at the end of June.
Yeah.
The liaison I spoke with indicated to me that this person would fulfill, there aren't a lot of criteria for this particular one, but he indicated support should you wish to advance her.
Fine with me.
It's fine with me.
So in the interest of full disclosure, Ms. Siebel worked on my campaign for city council. So
Okay. Well, then you
guys
guys know each other. You're going to be on this committee together. That's good.
So anyway,
Okay.
anyway, I just want to let you guys know.
Thank you for
Okay.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. We'll move that one forward. Public Art Commission.
Well, here's one where you will have to deliberate this a bit because the two applicants, current applicants, qualify for one of the vacancies.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendation for the Ward 1 counselor? Has Virginia said anything to you?
No, she has not.
Okay.
That's interesting, though. You're right. They're both from Ward 1.
Yeah.
I noticed that as well.
I'm always surprised when folks doing this, where their ward is requested, don't talk to the counselor. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Agreed.
They both look quite well qualified to me. I'm sure we can't go wrong with either. I do find interesting that on Ms. Napak's application, it says that the chair of the Public Arts Commission encouraged her to apply.
Ah,
I think that's a point in Ms. Napak's favor.
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, let's go with, I agree, Vanessa, that's a really good point. And looking at her references, they seem to be really related to this position. So I would be comfortable with NAPAC, definitely.
Okay, so I'll just move, we send this forward, Susan Napak, without objection, okay?
Okay,
West Salem,
one final.
one left. Thank you so much for being ready on these. West Salem Development Advisory Board.
Mhm. And there are two current applicants, and you may have again noticed that they each qualify for one of the vacancies. And that has been confirmed through the liaison. I really rely on the liaisons a lot to help me with these very specific designations and to make sure that they actually qualify.
And this one, we've had historically had difficulty with people fitting into particular spots, it seems like.
Right.
Yes, it can be very challenging.
Yeah.
So Mr. Smith qualifies for that partial term position representing industrial business in the URA. And then Mr. Crozier qualifies for a resident living in the West Salem Neighborhood Association boundaries.
That's great.
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, we
Yes.
have to pick though. We have to pick between the two because they qualify for the same position. Isn't that right, Linda?
No, actually, they qualify for different positions.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
We're getting,
Yeah, I'm good
actually
with them
getting
both.
a twofer
You,
here.
you can get a
Great.
twofer potentially, yes.
Great. Yeah, I'm good with both of them.
Okay. Without objection, then we'll move those forward. And
Yep.
anything else you'd like to bring up? Great.
Not for me.
I will get back to you on that North Gateway applicant as soon as possible.
Thank you.
And we'll make sure we have the education and employment experience from now on those applications. That's a really good call.
Mhm.
Okay.
And Linda, just to clarify, will you be providing council with potential questions for our council interviews with the Ward 8 applicants, or should we be prepared on our own?
You know, that's a
Um,
very good question. That was one of those things that woke me up at about 4 o'clock this morning. So I will consult with Ms. Bennett, who is on this call, and I suspect that, and do some research on the last one to see if we had some questions for it and pull
Do
those
you
out.
guys, and if you guys have any,
Yeah.
send them to Linda.
Mhm.
Okay, I think it's always good just to have some suggested questions, and then
Mhm.
people may have their own also, but I think it's good to have a starting point.
It's nice to have a roadmap. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, from my perspective, again, having served in that very unusual capacity, we had 12 applicants, 2 interviews, or 2 people interviewed. I can't tell you that I remember the questions as I sit here today. I thought the questions were really good though. You guys asked questions about land use and a variety of other things. Knowing that homelessness is very top of mind, I think some questions that would call for people to, you know, really say, well, what do you think we're doing right and how can we do better? Honestly, I think would be helpful, because what we often find is that most folks don't have a sense of all the work we're already doing. And then they get into this position like, oh, you're already building affordable housing. You already have the HRAP that the mayor helped champion. We already do this, this, and this. I guess the issue is a lot more complicated than I thought. I think that can really help distinguish the candidates if they can show they've done a little bit of homework, because
Exactly.
this is it's a tough position that requires a lot of nuance and diplomacy and a lot of reading.
You know, you reminded me when you said about your situation. I was appointed to the council
Oh, that's
15
right.
years ago. I was the only applicant, so, but I also was talking to a very, very different council back then. Real interesting, different views on issues, and it was a very challenging interview, because what they were challenging was what my political kind of, what's your ideology? You're kind of sitting there thinking, I'm applying to be on the city council. I want to stop a train horn and build sidewalks. You know, I'm not here to solve world problems. So
People think that we're partisan, and it's not.
It's not. And I listen for that anymore. Is are we being careful on that? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. See you Monday.
All right.